we've just magically been in the kitchen, not even sweating or anything.
No.
We've just got an array of food to now start photographing. So typically this would be about a day's or a half day's worth of work, and we want to showcase it now. So what are some do's and don'ts of even just in the plating and starting to decide if we want an overhead shot, a singular shot? What are some things we need to consider?
Well, number one, I've always been a believer of more is better.
Yeah.
So in this case, you could tell that these plates, bowls, containers are full because it just fills the space and it's adding texture. This one, for example, is a little more empty.
Right.
And it looks as if somebody already had some of this.
Yeah. Looks
There's
like
a lot of
ate it. Looks like it's lacking. Just seems a bit sad. So
sad.
Sure.
And there's a lot of glass showing, and we don't want that. We want the food because it's about the food.
Right.
And it's hard to pick up texture because honestly, in photography land, you want the food to be in your foreground, not your background. And in this case, there's a lot of glass.
Yes. Okay. So full dishes. Keep that in mind for whatever containers you're choosing to use. Making sure that if you are taking a picture that you think about the volume, and more is better in this case. Isn't more always better?
More is always better.
Okay, what's something else that you notice?
Okay, so I noticed that even though these dishes smell good and I know they're going to taste good, as with photography, something brown in a bowl isn't that appetizing, or looks appetizing. So you're going to want to fix it up, especially with, say, something like this that's savory. Parsley is always a great thing to add texture to because it's pretty neutral. You can add parsley to anything, and it could be part of the ingredient. So that's a huge thing. Like if there's tomatoes in a dish, you want to put a tomato on top, whatever, highlight one of the ingredients. So here, whether or not you're gonna, put this whole parsley in the dish while you're eating it, for photography, you're gonna use a larger piece so that you know what it is. It's good to recognize. And just by doing this,
really brightens it, really pops
it breaks up the brown. It explains that it's part of the ingredient, and my thing is, it's got tons of texture, which is fantastic for photography.
Okay.
Yeah, loving it.
And even something like a dish like this. This was essentially like a healthy hamburger helper. And even though it is a little bit brighter than, let's say, this ground beef, just taking something like a piece of parsley and arranging them, just symmetry throughout can really make a dish look a lot different. So a lot of it is just in the garnish. One of the other things that I notice in putting things into glass containers, just doing this throughout the years, making sure that they're not dirty. In a photo, you can quickly just see little pieces of chocolate or whatever is in your ingredient. So making sure that everything is, number one, not chipped, and very clean around the edges. So make sure that you have a cloth nearby, and that you can make sure that is clean before you take any photos. Something else just to mention is a lot of this food was prepared yesterday. This is where you'll have to consider if you're working with a photographer and they're doing your photos, versus if you're going to be doing them on the same day that you cook. Keeping in mind color transference a day later. So yesterday when this pasta salad was made, all the pasta noodles were still full and they weren't discolored from sitting in the container overnight. So here you can see the next day the tomato is now on the noodle, and the noodle is broken because they're gluten-free. And you can just see when I opened the container too, it was very flat and we needed to fluff it up. So know that hot food, even though steam, I imagine, plays a role in things, it actually looks a lot better for food that was prepared that day, in my opinion.
And with steam, I mean, sure, you're going to cover some overhead shots, but when you've got that steam, use it to your advantage by shooting, maybe sideways, right? Because then the steam is... It's just a better angle for steam.
What about color? Is it good? I mean, food, obviously, visually, color tends to be really kind of alluring, I would say. But even something like this, maybe you have a few other tricks for us, but the girls have prepared just a peanut butter bar. But instead of it being all brown on top, they've used some Malden flakes.
Again, brown.
Yeah, brown. We're
Really good food is brown.
Mask all the brown, essentially. But using something like Malden sea salt just to highlight and break up that palette.
Again, it's texture, it's contrast, and that is like the main thing with photography that helps.
Texture and contrast.
Yes, absolutely.
Love
and
it.
say if this was plated on a really pretty plate and being presented for photography, then I would cut it so that we can see inside of it.
Okay, I love that too.
Yeah.
So we're going to be really highlighting 3 different types of posts and photos for you to highlight on your social media, which is essentially going to be an overhead shot of all of your creation, a individualized and highlighted recipe, so one recipe in a photo, and then you as the chef. So let's talk about first what just this food is sitting on, and what are some tips that these chefs can use in terms of making sure that consistency plays a role, and just that they're photographing it somewhere that makes sense.
Right. So consistency is definitely key when it comes to taking pictures, and multiple pictures to stay consistent. Marble is hands down my favorite surface to photograph really anything, especially food, because it's in the kitchen and it sort of, dictates that you're in a kitchen. And I think that's important, that you kind of know, it's part of a kitchen, or it's part of wherever you're trying to.
It's not on the floor. It's not on the wood panel on a floor.
Cement. Although, right, if you were to use
works.
cement or slate, which is another great material, it's kind of, you don't see the grass, or anyways, it could work. But back to marble. So using marble creates a nice clean backdrop, right? And it will help with all of the other photos that you're going to take, right? Because it's creating just a clean backdrop. It's making the food stand out.
So for those of us who don't have access to a beautiful island like this, what is a way that we can still have that access to that, but not necessarily have it in our home?
Going to your local tile store. They have a ton of samples, large and small, but usually, I don't know, what's a good measure?
Depends what you're after.
It's true.
You get to choose your stylistic approach. Are you covering 15 dishes like this at once? Are you just doing a few at once? I know that when I first started a few years ago, I just got, they were probably 2 feet by 3 feet.
That's the one I'm
roughly
talking about.
But I must say it wasn't quite big enough. You can't do a shot like this, like that. Something this caliber, this size, is really best done on a table of some kind.
Get
or
some
larger piece.
Yes, wood is great because you can get it at your local lumber store, and you can
put it over top.
Exactly. Could look like a rustic table. But
just choose something that you feel suits your style.
Exactly.
Is your brand represented by whites and colors? Is it represented by darks and moodies? They're really still searching for their style in a lot of ways. So we're not here to tell you what would be a right shot or a wrong shot, but rather just letting you know that what tends to be very likable is people seeing what you're capable of doing. In this case, meal preparation, and then who you are. And then highlighting just beautiful photos in individual recipes that just make somebody say, oh, I want to eat that. People always comment on our photos at 10 o'clock at night and that say, oh, I shouldn't be on your feed right now. I'm so hungry. I'm going to bed. But what is that thing? And sweets are definitely showcased a lot more, in my opinion, and salads than meats. Meats don't tend to photograph very well. They're a little bit more on the tricky side, but you can get away with an overhead shot like this, showcasing everything that you've made in a really beautiful manner. Okay. Another thing that is helpful if you don't have all of the expertise that Tracey has is having something nearby for a visual cue. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Nope.
Where did you stand stylistically, and how have you had to, do you have to be good at that? Is that something that you rely on other people for?
Intuitively, I guess I am good at that. You can't be good at everything. I can't cook. So I'm going to give it, you know, yes. I can style.
I can style. I can
See?
cook.
We're great.
We're on a team again.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm not a great styler, I must say. And that's why this overhead shot for me is a really forgiving shot.
Okay.
Because I can get away with showing people exactly what I did in a day's work that really makes people say, wow.
Yes.
Without having to be, detail orientation is not my strong suit. Yeah. And so therefore this like kind of broader spectrum of things. So you can ask yourself this going forward, what speaks naturally to you?
Right.
Do you like the finer details? Do you like positioning props? Do you like, you know, showcasing individually things or things that take a long time, or do you want something more quick? And
I think experimenting with your camera or phone is a good idea, because then you'll figure out what's more appealing to you. And being the cook, I think you'll know what you want to show your audience too. So whatever technique that you choose to photograph, you'll figure it out pretty quick, because you know what you want to, you know, show your audience. With me, I like to add texture, or you know that there's some kind of piece of the scene that relates to the whole product, a cookbook, you know, background. It's creating a lifestyle. I don't want to use lifestyle, but you just want to get a feeling for where we're at.
Yes. Another thing about texture that you may have not considered at this point, but is just noticing that we're using a number of different containers as well. They are all in glass in this case, but we've got jars that are different dimensions than circles and rounds. And I must say that spacing plays a big part in things. Do you have any tips around in terms of if they were doing an overhead shot, just in terms of like spacing? Should the things be close together, separate? Does it matter?
Well, I think this is a perfect example. We've sort of placed things together, so the pastas together, the salads together. I find this is a little interesting because all of the bowls that are the same size, they're in thirds, right? And then we're kind of adding, this is all the circles over here, and then we're nice work,
naturally
right?
That way.
You've got it. But yeah, so here's 3 of the medium-sized bowls, and then we're flanking the round pie by 2 smaller bowls. And if you notice, there's texture in all of them to a certain degree. I don't know. I feel like the pasta should go together as opposed to the meat between the 2 pastas.
Yes, like that.
And then again, you're kind of creating bookends with the 2 brown desserts, and then we're keeping the browns all in this section.
I love it.
I mean,
I can't tell you just how better this looks. I just looked down at it after looking at it for like, I don't know, the last 5 minutes.
That parsley, right?
Like, wow, it's really popping all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So know that it's really fine adjustments like that can make the world of difference. One thing that I've found in taking an overhead shot, by no means am I an expert, but somebody on our team used to be an expert at it, and one of the things she taught me was in terms of spacing containers from one another, was she always took her finger and she put them the same width away from one another, and always just kind of moved things in a symmetric way. And that really worked because I would always say to her, what makes your shot look so much better than my shot? And
because there's no dead space.
No dead space. And then you can maneuver containers, whether they be square or round, to fill in that dead space. Another great tool for that is using, if you have any dressing containers as well, small ones, to fill in the gaps, and know that also you need to bring up the visual. You can't just have one sad, lonely, if we were to take this piece of chocolate and put it down below here, that won't work. You need to bring everything.
Or it looks better with just
multiple. Yes.
Right?
Stack.
More the merrier. That's definitely a basic photo. Factor to remember when you're styling food. Look at that. See? It makes me happy.
Yes. Love it. Okay, so let's say that we did want to do an overhead shot to start. Where do we go from here?
Well,
We go up.
we go up. Good call. And depending upon your surface, you could either, say a coffee table.
Mm-hmm.
It might be easier because then you just have to stand.
Yeah.
Not all of us are going to have a coffee table that's workable. Not everybody's going to have an island that has marble, but in this case, this hopefully will give you a little bit of an idea
and
as to how would you do this. And slate,
is a good idea. Not slate, but even just a piece of something to put on your floor so that you can just simply go overhead.
Right, that's a huge, I mean, obviously you would know that it's just, you're looking down.
And it's quite inexpensive. It's quite inexpensive to get a hold of, something that was like 4x4, 5x5. You could just tuck it away in your closet for the time using. But if this is really something in a business that you intend to dedicate your next few years to, I really do highly recommend considering how you're going to put this into practice, because hiring a photographer, even though it is an amazing thing, it is not the leanest way to start a business. It definitely comes with time in terms of being able to hire somebody for a couple $1,000s, to do a shoot for you. Yeah.
So in this case, I guess with an island that's a bit higher, I would bring my chair in, stand on it, and then kind of go overhead.
And are you adjusting, for example, how do I even know what this looks like? Is it best to just elevate, get up there?
Yes.
And then modify as you go?
It's an up and down thing.
Okay.
I mean, you're always going to be adjusting things because sometimes in the camera it looks way different than it does. Some things to keep in mind, and this is where your phone might be a lot easier, is deciphering the heights because you've got different focal plane.
Right.
This is higher than this one, so this might be in focus.
Yes.
Something to think about, right?
100%.
So,
And something else too is don't expect to get it right off the bat.
No.
You're going to have to adjust and move and change things. And that's why I think I was stressing in doing this on a full day of service is slightly unrealistic. Unless you have a helper that is cleaning up or doing your thing. You really just want to give this the time, effort, and energy that it deserves to get a good shot done. So taking a special day or something like that when you have the time and energy. And also don't be afraid if something is not necessarily working in your shot, but you made it that day, to just take it out of the shot. I've done this before where it's like, okay, this didn't fill the container. It's maybe looking a little bit drab. Instead of worrying about how to get it into your shot, simply just take it out.
Take it out.
Remove it, and just don't worry about it. Nobody knows what you did or didn't cook that day, so don't feel like you always have to put everything into it. Another example of that is we have 2 of these, but I just didn't feel like we needed to showcase the other one. So
exactly.
Give yourself permission just to see what's working and what's not. One other thing maybe you can speak to is uniformity. What I'm noticing in with these peanut butter bars is that we've got 4 shaped one way and 1 shaped the other. In an overhead shot like this, maybe it doesn't make that big a difference, but in kind of a closer up shot, do you suggest everything kind of to be the same?
Not really.
Okay, not really. I've always wondered.
It is what it is. For me, it is what it is. I'm witnessing what's in front of me. And I think you brought up a good point. Like, we had 2, but we're putting in 1. When you're doing overheads, I think sometimes even like you're going to get your overall shot of everything. But then another idea is to just get part of the meal. You know what it is. I personally wouldn't mix the peanut butter brownies with the meat dish, but maybe the meat dish with pasta. And so you've got, that there's pasta. So whatever's more recognizable, that's the one that you can kind of cut out and know that it could be a side, right? It doesn't, I think you should get your overall, but you also could do an artsy shot where it's only partial.
Our stack just fell down. Oh. They're melting. They're meant for the fruit.
Okay, which is a good point with food, because you kind of got to work fast with food sometimes, really, right? And you always have to keep fluffing it. And
we're making a mess on Tracy's marble tape.
It's fine. Island. This is real life.
It is real life. Okay.
Always have a wet cloth around too.
Wet cloth is and we can just see it here. The picture is going to take up everything. Lastly, let's just talk about lighting. So, do they need to invest in any type of lighting? What is your suggestion around that?
Okay, so for me, I use daylight, which can be really challenging. On a dark day, you have to have a tripod because you have to have your camera still. Again, phones come in handy because they're magic.
Yeah.
They seem to handle everything that you have to manually set on your camera. Less technical. But a round light is wonderful. Like, as long as it's kind of a daylight setting, it's not warm, because you really want to have true colors with your food when you're photographing it.
But using windows in your house, take that slate board, move it to a corner of your house that has some sunlight access to it, and then consider that on days that you are going to be doing a few photos. Are you going to be making time for it at 8 a.m. in the morning? Where is the sun in your apartment? Are you going to wait till late at night? Photos can't just happen at any time if you're using daylight, obviously.
Correct. But I think also investing in some foam boards, or any kind of reflector, because then if you have a shadow on one side because your window's on just one wall, just kind of punch up that light.
Very inexpensive.
Very
inexpensive tools, reflectors.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to arrange things, and we're going to give you just a little bit of a behind the scenes of us doing that and taking our first overhead shot. One other thing to note too, if you are taking photos on your iPhone, is deciding if it's going to show up on your story or on your feed, because we tend to shoot things in the square option on our iPhone. If we have the availability to and put it on our feed that way, it just showcases a better photo. It looks like it was meant for that reel. So decide ahead of time if it's showing up on your story or if it's going on your feed. And just another great reminder is, before I photograph this, I might do just a little video to put on my story.
Yes.
To highlight what this is.
People love that.
People love it. People love it. And hashtag meal prep, and you will find that you're going to get a lot more feedback and comments from people. So let's put this together and take a shot.
Okay, sounds good.